So, I bought My Butler. And I bought My Butler because I don't remember where it had been advertised. I want to say it was on Otome Games, but I like the subreddit, but I actually think maybe it was somewhere else, maybe on a different Otome subreddit, not Otome Games. But regardless, I bought it because it was the end of the year and it was 50% off and it was only $5. And so I was like, oh, it's probably, you know, a fast Otome game. And I've recently just re entered Otome games, and there's so many options now compared to 10 years ago when I was like last interested in it. And I had not seen this one before, so I was like, okay, cool. Was not expecting what I have found. I'm not even through a single route yet. We're just going to go with the prologue, which is essentially the common route for this game, which has the most bizarre fucking premise of your aunt runs like this agency, and these three guys are an actor, a model, and an idol, and they're not cherishing their female fans enough, so they now have to act as your butler to learn to cherish their fans, and then you give your aunt feedback, I guess, at the end of 3 months. That's the whole thing, is 3 months. But like that's where the common route essentially ends. We don't really get to learn much of anything about the three guys except for like some very very basic information. And then we have to pick one. And being me, I chose the tsundere slash childhood friend to begin with, and I've only been through chapters 1 and 2, and holy fuck. So, unfortunately, these are not great pictures, but they're what I have, and it starts with Makoto here, like feeding you cookies or so. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was last night that I played it, but and he's like sticking his fingers in your mouth, and it's like very sexual. And then at one point in chapter 2, you're like handing him a cookie, and rather than just taking the cookie and eating it, he is sticking the full cookie and your fingers in his mouth. Like it was like the whole thing has just been like, it's just been like sexual, and like there's no undertone here. There's no suggestion. Like it's just full on. It's not subtle, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's not subtle suggestiveness. It's like just full on out there immediately. And it's not that I haven't necessarily have a problem with that. I wasn't expecting it. Because stupid me, I did zero research on this. I was like, Butler is cool, okay, and I picked it, and I started playing this, and I have to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the art style so far. The writing kind of strikes me as a little Wattpad-y. Like everything, like it's not how anyone actually talks. It's kind of hard to get lost in the story at all because it's so much like, fangirls for smutty fanfic. And the tsundere aspect is not done subtly in the slightest, and I think part of my harshness for this game starting out is just unfairly because I'm coming from Cupid Parasite, which was a very well written game. The characters were amazing and well thought out, and this is a much smaller studio. This game is also significantly older, and I'm far less budget, so it's not really fair for me to compare the two, and it's not that I'm trying to compare the two, but I definitely think I'm struggling to get absorbed in the story at all, because it's kind of clumsily written. The tsundere thing is, like, very stereotypical. It's not a well-written tsundere. And I don't know. I'm going to keep playing it. I paid for it. I'm going to play it. I think I might only get through Makoto's route before I take a break and then maybe play a different game. But right now, one more thing. The music is annoying the shit out of me. I am not a fan of this music. It's like this dollhouse piano music. Not a fan. Not a fan. But I can be pretty picky with background music. There's very few visual novel games that have gotten it right for me. So I'm just picky in that regard. I do think that this might have been helped some if there was some voice acting in this game, because there's no voice acting. But I'm going to just kind of continue to see how this goes. It's not that I hate the game, because I really feel like it's coming across like I hate the game. I don't have a strong opinion of the game yet. I know I don't. I know I'm not a huge fan of the art style. I don't hate the art style. I'm just, it's not my favorite. The music annoys me, and it does feel clumsily written. But that doesn't mean that it can't have a charm all its own. So we'll see. Okay, so I have now played through 2 more chapters, chapter 3 and chapter 4. And there's already been a love confession, which was kind of surprising for me, given that this is 10 chapters long and they confess to each other in chapter 3. But I'm assuming that's because it seems like this is trying to, like, move things along at a fairly fast pace to get to the sex, I guess. So, fine, whatever. But Makoto is, like, giving off serious yandere vibes, and I'm not here for it. There's a birthday party, and he's like, I don't want you to talk to anyone but me, and, like, he wants to field conversations, and, like, no one can talk to her, the main character, directly, and everyone has to go through him, and, like, he announces this, and all of the characters, like, even all the other side characters, the other love interests are like, what in the fuck? And I gotta be honest, I'm a bit like, what the fuck, too? And this weird obsession with watching the main character sleep is a little creepy. I'm really trying to, like, not judge this game super harshly, but I am not really enjoying Makoto's, his route so much. I'm hoping that things get better, but this just seems like controlling behavior that's presented as love, and I'm not loving it. Okay, so I've now played through chapters 5 and 6, and Makoto kept getting, like, even further and further out of control for me. Like, he would hug the protagonist until it hurt, and even when she told him it hurt, he wouldn't stop. He, like, continually about, I don't like you talking to other guys when I'm not there. I don't like you talking to guys, period. He's really possessive and jealous, and not in a cute way. It was just being like, I really am not liking this. I'm not having a good time with this. And then, thankfully, you had the option to call him out on it. And it seems like after you called him out, even though that didn't benefit, like, the love percentage thing that you have, it made things a little bit better. Things are moving really fast in this, too. Like, the 3 months are already over. I believe there's still 4 chapters left, but the 3 months are already over. And things are moving at, like, a pretty quick... This is clearly a very short one, very abbreviated story. And no fault on it there. The characters kind of feel a bit one-dimensional, and at least in Makoto's route, like, the only one that has any sort of personality, it feels like, is really Makoto. I don't really get a sense of the other personalities in that, because there's 4 other butlers, 2 that are also love interests, and then 2 that are just kind of there. And I don't really have any significant perspective on any of their personalities, which is fine. That's not a deal breaker for me, given the clearly the shortness of this game and the fact that it's just a smaller scale game than something that had a physical release. But I do like that Makoto's behavior is kind of called out, not just by, like, the option, but all of the other men in the household will be like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? And I do appreciate that. I appreciate that it's like, this is not, like, normal behavior. It's creepy. Like, so one of them even calls him creepy, which I appreciate. So I will give the game that. I also want to take it back what I said about the music. I don't hate it. It's, and I don't find it annoying so much anymore. It's kind of blended into the background. It's actually become really not so bad. And it's not bad music. It's simple, but for the type of game that it is, I don't mean otome, I mean, like, given that it's a smaller scale game, not bad on the music. I'm not going to harp on the music. Makoto, I'm really curious to see where this will ultimately end up. I'm feeling a little bit more invested, and thankfully it plays fairly quickly. So it's pretty easy to get through it fairly quickly. I have spent maybe an hour on this so far while stopping to record these little bits, and I've made it through 4 chapters. So that's like 15 minutes a chapter. That's not bad. That's a fairly fast moving, quick game. So I might go ahead and play the other 2 routes just immediately after, before moving on to another game. I at this point I'm curious to know if all of the guys have this issue of being overly possessive. And the thing is that in order to get, I can tell that the options that would have brought up his love score more, because where we are right now, I'm heading in to chapter 7. His love score is only at 54%. I can tell that it probably would have been higher given the reactions and stuff I got if I had excused his behavior, because there were options to excuse his behavior, like, that's just the way he shows love. I love Makoto, and that's how he protects me, and that's, like, it's excusing the behavior that would yield you a better result. And if I don't get the best ending, I probably will do, like, the skip read function where I'm not reading through everything, but go ahead and go through and just see what happens when you choose. The one thing I'll give this game is that it does make it seem like, how differently would this have gone if I had just bought into his behavior? Like, does this go full fucking, amnesia memories Toma? Does it go that route? So I'll be interested to see how things go with him. He also had a little bit of an issue with that reminded me a bit of Gil from Cupid Parasite, where he decided his whole career based on the type of guy she said she liked. And in Cupid Parasite, that was a misunderstanding. This one, it's a little less creepy because he made the decision when they were still kids. Everyone in this situation is a little bit younger, so it kind of making these kinds of decisions, while still not great, are a bit more understandable than Gil, who was, like, heading out of college and made this life-changing decision because he's so desperate for a girl's affection who hasn't even noticed he's existed, even though they've lived together. I don't want to go off on a tangent on Cupid Parasite, but so far, like, it's certainly not a top game for me. It's holding my interest. I will give it that. It is holding my interest, and I'll see how it continues through the weekend, because I'm playing it over the course of the weekend. I have no idea when this video will go up or if it will ever even see the light of day, but here we are. Okay, so I have now finished pretty much everything that is available for Makoto. Turns out it was only 7 chapters, so I finished the 7 chapters. I got the happy ending initially. I then played through the sequel scenario, which was only 1 scene with no choices, so it was just kind of like one of those after scenes, and then a date scenario. And then I went back, played through again, got the normal ending. And the big difference between the happy ending and the normal ending is whether Makoto stays an idol or not. In the happy ending, he does, which leads into the sequel scenario, and in the normal ending, he does not. In the normal ending, I actually feel like he is a little less possessive, and it just kind of seems like a better couple ending than the happy ending. Because in the happy ending, he does, like, in both he proposes, but it's a normal proposal in the normal ending, and then in the happy ending, it's, he, like, starts to announce it on, like, a radio broadcast, or at least talks about it, and then that leads into him proposing to her, and then he immediately, like, whisks her off to a chapel despite anything that the protagonist says, and ends up kind of marrying her, and she's happy about it, but it doesn't, like, it's like she had no say in it. It was kind of weird. The sequel scenario was kind of cute. Surprisingly enough, there was no explicit, material at all, which, it's not necessarily, like, that was a disappointment or anything. I don't really care one way or another. But for how heavy-handed the, like, sexual tension was and how heavy-handed, like, a lot of the suggestive scenes were, I was surprised that there wasn't, like, explicit material, especially since I took a look on Steam. I didn't realize this was also a Steam game. I'm playing it on the Nintendo Switch. And it's, like, behind an age wall. So I'm kind of surprised. I'm wondering if it was censored in the Nintendo Switch version. Overall, Makoto was a little overly possessive to the point where it was creepy, and even the other characters called him out for how creepy it was, which I liked that part, and I liked that you could address it and have him correct that behavior. But it's kind of like in the happy ending, it reverted back to that. I think because in the route, I think that what you're supposed to do is kind of excuse his behavior. So the happy ending would make more sense in that scenario. As to where in the normal ending, he's dialing it back more, and it seems like more like a normal relationship. Overall, for Makoto, it was just, they leaned really hard in very, very stereotypical tsundere lines. But then, like, immediately there's this love confession really early on. Everything seems to flow fairly quickly, which is fine. I think that's just kind of the nature of this particular game. But I don't know. I think the true ending for him, the happy ending for him, feeds a little too much into some of those toxic traits that we saw in the route. And I wasn't a huge fan of it. The sequel scenario, which is what the image that you're looking at now, that's what that's from. Very cute, again, very suggestive without, like, going all the way, but it was still it was a cute couple situation. I don't really like, though, how, regardless of what scenario it is, at some point he is grabbing her wrist very forcefully to the point where she says it hurts and dragging her along. There's all about this suspension of disbelief, and I understand that there is an appeal to... I even understand the appeal of a jealous and slightly possessive love interest. I get the appeal of that. I think it takes it too far. I think it takes it past the fun, possessive, jealous quality that can exist and turns it into something a little creepy and a bit uncomfortable. So, at this point, though, with how quickly this played through, I was able to finish it in, like, 2 hours. I'm thinking I'll go ahead and just play through the other two routes real quick. Similar setup, give my thoughts every couple of chapters or so. And, yeah, Makoto wasn't what I expected. Normally I love childhood friends and tsunderes, but he was not, I was not a fan of him. So... if you've played this, I'd love to hear your opinions on Makoto's route in the comments below, not the description, in the comments below. And I'll sign off here. Thank you for watching.